Machiavelli didn't romanticize human nature. He exposed it. He saw that most people are driven by need. Need for security, love, status. And those needs are used to control them like puppets. But when you cut those strings, when you no longer crave what others can give you become untouchable. Not because they're antisocial, but because they know that power requires distance. If you want to be respected, create space. If you want to be powerful, learn to walk alone. Because the one who walks alone moves faster, sees clearer, and acts without compromise. It's saying no to invitations that waste your energy. It's being okay with being misunderstood, disliked, or even feared because you're focused on something larger than approval. It's choosing long nights of thinking, planning, building, while the rest are lost in small talk and distraction. It's not easy. It's not glamorous. Machiavelli studied power not through people-pleasing, but through psychological warfare, manipulation, and ruthless observation. And he did it alone. So ask yourself, can you detach from needing constant attention? Can you trust your own voice more than the noise of the crowd? Because most will never escape the trap. They'll chase love. They'll chase applause. They'll chase belonging. But the man who builds without needing, the man who thinks without asking, the man who moves alone, that man is dangerous. He doesn't need to be liked. He doesn't need to explain. The world worships connection. It glorifies relationships, friendships, constant interaction. It tells you don't be alone. That's dangerous. That's sad. And that's exactly why most people stay powerless. Being surrounded by people who distract you, slow you down, and dilute your focus. That's weakness. Solitude, when embraced properly, is the birthplace of power. When he was exiled from political life, stripped of his influence and disgraced publicly, he didn't beg to be let back in. And in that silence, he wrote The Prince, a cold, calculated blueprint for controlling people, influencing rulers, and navigating brutal political systems. He didn't need an army. He didn't need approval. When you're constantly around people, you start thinking like them. You conform without realizing it. Solitude breaks that. It pulls you out of the current. When you're alone, a strange thing happens. Your vision sharpens. That's why powerful men retreat before they rise. It's not retreat. It's refinement. You cannot build a fortress in the middle of a carnival. And you cannot build mental dominance when you're emotionally entangled in everyone's problems. Solitude is not loneliness. It's strategic detachment. Most people use others as emotional crutches. They're constantly around people not because they're building anything meaningful, but because they're avoiding themselves. But here's the hard truth. If you cannot sit in a room alone without losing your mind, you have no power. And that sovereignty is only tested when no one's watching, no one's clapping, and no one's helping. Let's talk psychologically. Your brain is designed to adapt to whatever environment it's in. So if you're constantly surrounded by chatter, distraction, and superficial emotion, your brain adjusts to that chaos. But when you isolate yourself, when you cut the noise, your mind is forced to confront itself. This is where most men break. No distractions to numb you, no fake friends to keep you comfortable, just you and the truth. It confronts your excuses. It demands you evolve or be devoured. You develop clarity. You gain emotional independence. And that makes you unstoppable. Machiavelli didn't say rely on the people, because love depends on closeness, emotion, access. But fear can be built in absence. And solitude trains control. It teaches you how to regulate yourself without needing outside forces to stabilize you. It builds mental toughness because no one's encouraging you. And when you come out of that solitude, you return different, colder, sharper, focused, silent, unbothered by opinions, uninterested in drama, immune to nonsense. People will say, "You've changed. You're distant. You're hard to reach." Good. Let them talk. So yes, go silent. Disappear. Cut the noise and give yourself the space to build what no one sees coming. You can't sharpen a blade in a storm, and you can't sharpen your mind in constant noise. Everyone's talking. No one's thinking. Most men are drowning in input. They consume all day, regurgitate what they hear, and think that's intelligence. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wasn't a philosopher who wrote from comfort. He used that silence not to complain, but to observe, to sharpen his understanding of human nature, to turn his mind into a scalpel. And what did he produce? A book that has terrified rulers for 500 years. You see, noise makes your mind reactive. Silence makes it strategic. You unconsciously absorb their fears, their limits, their mediocrity. But when you separate yourself, when you remove the stimulus, the distraction, the constant opinions, something changes. You begin to hear your own mind clearly for the first time. You'll realize how little of your thinking was ever truly yours. And that discomfort, that's your moment of power. You start making decisions not based on what others think, but based on calculation. You think for the long game, not for immediate satisfaction. Isolated, outcast, irrelevant to the crowd, yet mentally 5 steps ahead of kings. Look around. People talk too much because they think too little. And most people don't want truth. They want comfort. And clarity only comes in solitude. You become locked in. Discipline. You control your impulses instead of being controlled by them. Pattern recognition. You begin to see how people think, move, and fall. Self-control. And this is when people start fearing you because they don't understand you anymore. You're not emotional. You've gone quiet and deadly. This is why Machiavellian thinking is feared. And the average mind, drowned in noise, cannot compete. You must protect your time, your thoughts, your attention. So your brain stops needing distraction and starts producing strategy. And the man who can sit still, think deeply, and act precisely, that man becomes something very rare. There's a hidden currency more valuable than money, more scarce than loyalty, and more dangerous when mismanaged than any weapon time. And in today's world, most men are bleeding it dry because they've surrendered control. They chase dopamine. They meet people they don't need. They are slaves to distraction, slaves to the agenda of others. He owns it, and time, when weaponized, becomes the greatest advantage in war, business, and life. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He didn't have wealth, but he had one thing that most rulers never earned: complete autonomy over his hours. While they chased favor, he built clarity in solitude. And you cannot command your time while you are surrounded. You respond to their pace, their urgency, their noise. It lets you operate on your own frequency. The man who says yes to everything ends up doing nothing well. But the man who chooses solitude, he becomes a master of priorities. Every action is aligned, not reactive. Every move is made with purpose. 1 year of this kind of solitude, of focused time ownership, puts you 5 years ahead of the man chasing distraction. That's why the men who shape history don't announce every step. Solitude is the secret, because it gives you room to think, which is a luxury the distracted man cannot afford. It gives you room to plan while others improvise under pressure. If you can't be alone with your calendar, your thoughts, and your long-term vision, you're not a man. You're a pawn in someone else's plan. You don't waste hours on small talk. There's a version of you the world has never met. He's colder, smarter, calm under pressure, brutal when necessary. And he doesn't care what anyone thinks. You won't find him in comfort. You won't meet him at parties. You'll only meet him when you vanish, when you disconnect from everyone and everything. Machiavelli would tell you, power doesn't come when you feel good. It comes when you're stripped of everything unnecessary, friends. Validation, distractions, and forced to build with nothing but your mind. That version of you, he doesn't ask for advice. He doesn't justify his ambition. He doesn't hesitate to destroy what slows him down. But you'll only become him after you've been alone long enough to stop fearing the silence. Most men never reach that point. They can't take the pressure. They run back to comfort. Don't be like them. In this video, I'll teach you why solitude is not isolation. It's strategy. You'll learn how to weaponize silence, develop mental dominance, and use being alone to become the most dangerous version of yourself. Stay till the end, because once you understand this, you'll never see solitude the same again. Most people walk through life blind, not because they're stupid, but because they're never alone long enough to see clearly. They live in a fog of conversation, opinions, emotions, and noise. Surrounded by people, they adopt beliefs that were never theirs. They react, they conform, they follow. And worst of all, they lie to themselves because there's always someone around to help maintain the illusion. But the man who isolates himself, he loses all of that. The masks crack, the lies melt, and for the first time, he sees what most people never will, the truth. And that's why solitude isn't just a luxury, it's a weapon. Because the truth you uncover in silence gives you an unfair advantage over the rest of the world. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. When he was exiled, he didn't waste time crying about betrayal or injustice. He withdrew, he observed. He studied human nature without the filters. And what did he find? That most men are cowards hiding behind morality. That loyalty is conditional. That fear is more reliable than love. That people want to be controlled. They just want it done skillfully. These are truths polite society refuses to admit. But in isolation, Machiavelli confronted them. And because he did, he could predict human behavior like a game of chess. Now ask yourself, how much clearer would your vision be if you detached from the noise? No friends sugarcoating your flaws. No social media feeding you fake status. No shallow conversations diluting your thinking. Just you versus the raw facts. It's brutal. It's uncomfortable. But it's real. And once you face reality without illusion, you gain something priceless. Leverage? Because while others are making emotional decisions, you're calculating. While they're chasing pleasure, you're positioning. While they're playing the role they were told to play, you're writing the script. That's what isolation gives you. Not just time, not just focus, but insight that others can't handle. You start to see who actually respects you, who fears you, who pretends to like you out of convenience. You see the lies people tell, especially the ones they tell themselves. And most importantly, you stop lying to yourself. That's when your power becomes real. Because it's not built on delusion. It's built on undeniable observation. Solitude strips away the flattering noise. It leaves you face to face with your laziness, your vanity, your emotional dependencies, your fake goals, your false identity. And if you endure that process without running back to comfort, something rare happens. You no longer need to be right. You just want to see clearly. And that clarity, it gives you an unfair advantage over everyone still lost in the fog. You'll see patterns they miss. You'll see weaknesses they ignore. You'll see power dynamics unfolding while they're still caught in emotion. You'll become inhumanly effective. That's why so many powerful men in history were loners. Not because they hated people, but because they valued truth more than connection. And truth, unfiltered, brutal truth, is only found in solitude. You can't access it when you're trying to be liked. You can't access it when you're afraid of offending people. You can't access it when you're addicted to approval. You access it alone when there's no one left to lie to, not even yourself. So, if you want real vision, not just motivation, if you want strategic power, not just surface success, if you want to see how the world truly works, you must step away and stay there until your illusions die. Because when they do, you'll come back as something very few people ever become. A man who doesn't just act differently, a man who sees the entire game differently. And that is the beginning of unstoppable power. Most people aren't free, not because they're in chains, but because they're addicted to other people, addicted to attention, addicted to praise, addicted to being liked. They can't function without it, and that makes them weak, because dependency is slavery. Machiavelli warned, the one who depends on others to stand will fall when they walk away. And in the modern world, that's 99% of people. They live in fear of being alone because their confidence isn't real. It's outsourced. They can't think unless someone agrees with them. They can't act unless someone approves. They can't even rest unless someone validates their worth. But the man who breaks this pattern, the man who chooses solitude over approval, he becomes terrifying because he is no longer owned. He doesn't beg for affection. He doesn't chase popularity. He doesn't wait to be chosen. He chooses himself. This is what solitude does. It forces you to stand on your own thoughts. It forces you to trust your own instincts. It forces you to become mentally sufficient. That's the foundation of real power. The ability to move without asking, to act without flinching, and to build without needing applause. Let's look at this practically. When you depend on others emotionally, you become predictable. Your actions are easy to manipulate. Say the right thing. They lift you, ignore you, they destroy you. This is control, and you gave it to them. But when you choose solitude, you remove their leverage. They can't control a man who doesn't need them. That's why society conditions you to fear being alone, because a man who's comfortable in solitude cannot be governed.